Thank you so much for joining me today. We are not doing System Command Line. We are watching Matrix tonight, so I'm joking. Hey, yeah, weather was nice today. My name is Fanie Reynders. I am a developer, and I don't know, hopefully you guys also like .NET and the programming language C#. And a lot of this talk is going around creating a CLI tooling for your own solution and all that kind of things. And yes, of course, we can do that ourselves using the console, you know, the normal hello world, and you can do these kind of things. But this talk today is about a library called System.CommandLine, right? It's a library, not a framework or anything like that. It's a library to help us parse the input and give a whole context around a CLI app. That's all it is. And if you guys are familiar with DevOps workflows or tooling workflows, it's all about developer experience. This is not meant for users, like customers. This is meant for developers and to create tooling for developers and workflows, which is System Command Line. So you might have noticed that I don't use PowerPoint. I decided to kind of do the whole thing in the light of a command line interface. Let's do the PowerPoint in a command line, you know, and it's built with System Command Line. So it's like a what's happening here kind of thing. If you want to follow my live coding, I do live coding on Twitch and on YouTube. I like to do these kind of crazy experiments. Go check out my profile and my stream. I do try to stream every week, but it's not always possible. But it's fun. CLI developers, are there any CLI developers in the house here? Right, so that's good. At least one. But let's quickly take a step back on what is a CLI, right? It's a command line interface. But I think I'm missing a slide here, actually. There we go, this one, actually. What is a command line interface? Well, a CLI is a command line interface, but it's really an API in a shell, and it runs headless. So think about it as it's an API, but it doesn't have a screen or anything like that. You are alone with the terminal of choice. You give it a command or a string, and it understands it, and it does something, and it executes something. So a typical anatomy of a CLI is you have, you know, actually you've been using a CLI like Git is a CLI, .NET has a CLI. A lot of these kind of things have CLIs underneath. Even the Visual Studios, underlyingly, it's firing up CLIs. NuGet has a CLI. So it's doing those things under the covers, but you don't even know about it. But the basic anatomy of a CLI is a root command, typically the driver of a command line. Then you have a subset of subcommands. Think about it again in the context of .NET. .NET new being a subcommand, right? Then you have options and arguments. So options are parameterized values that you can give a CLI, and arguments are like the values of the parameters, if that makes sense. So if we're going to be talking about the command line tool or the command line library today, keep this in mind. And this is what I already spoke about, the command line structure. And quickly about the system command line. I'm motoring through this slides, PPT slides, if you can call it that, to actually get to the good stuff. But what's important of what system command line does for us, right? Typically, when you create a CLI from scratch using no framework, you are responsible for interpreting and parsing the input. And doing that is easy for simple applications, but if you think about a tool like .NET CLI, it can become immensely complex. Think about help files and that kind of things. So it's a real art to kind of keep that intact and also consistent. This allows you to do those kind of things consistently and keep your logic of the application or your tool separate from the actual parsing logic of the rest of the things. And like I mentioned, it's also consistent. So there's a thing called the POSIX standard. I'm not entirely sure where it originates from, but it's an industry standard for CLIs. And it respects the POSIX standard, and also there's a Windows standard that it also respects. And it's used by .NET itself. So it's a kind of a dog fooding mechanism that they use this library in itself to build tools out there. In Linux and Unix worlds, there's this tab completion feature where you can do like, autocomplete your CLI. In Windows, natively, that doesn't support that. If you're not using PowerShell, in PowerShell it works with a kind of a hack. And also, it also uses RSP, which is response files. So you can actually give it a response file to parse whatever is in that file. What do you need to get started? Well, any code editor of your choice. Visual Studio Code, maybe, might be a good one. And .NET 6 SDK, maybe .NET 7 is also supported. So that's basically it. Small disclaimer, right? So being a developer, right, we are going to kind of spice things up. There's no proper demo, like a predefined scripting demo defined. We're going to go in and we're going to create one from scratch. We're going to build something that I think you guys can help me steer. And we're going to be sitting in developer's seat and we're going to be building this thing out and seeing what comes out. Just to take you on that journey and how easy it actually is to get going with this CLI tool. Now it's demo time. It's just terminal, right? It's not a real movie, right? Okay, so I'm not really a terminal guy, so I'm trying to kind of be cool here in front of everyone with the whole PowerShell thing. But ultimately, what we want to do is we want to create a new directory. Let me just see. Make directory. Let's call this .NET Meetup. And we say, and also, mkdir is a CLI in itself, right? So we've already been using these kind of things. Let's go to .NET Meetup. And let's go .NET new create, .NET new console, and we'll call it, let's call it Meetup. And the framework is, I think it's framework.NET 6 or something. You have to specify it like that, right? Can you guys see that? First of all, .NET there is the driver, it's the executable. New is the command. Console is an argument in this case. -n is an option with a value of Meetup, and -- framework is another option with a value .NET 6. I'm not sure if that will work actually, the .NET 6 thing. Well, that's actually very cool because it actually tells me it needs to be .NET 6.0. So it's intuitive enough to understand my intent, right? So as a developer, I don't have to worry about it's all strings and I have to parse that. I can just quickly fix my code and that should be fine. Well, I have it, but not .NET, so there we go, wrong dot, there we go. And that should generate my project .NET 6 accordingly. And then we need to pause for effect. I need to go into that thing again. CD Meetup, and let's go to code. What was generated? And this is a normal, if you're familiar with .NET 6, it's a normal clean CSproj file with almost nothing in there, right? So I don't know, this is not entirely good to see, but is that kind of readable? Yeah, great. Okay, so if we say, console.writeLine, if we say hello world, and let's say we want to pass in the, why is it green? Let's say we want to pass in a parameter. Let's say the parameter is here name, and that is the args. The args comes from somewhere, right? But technically behind the scenes here, what was generated from the SDK is syntactic sugar. It is still there, the program main is still there, The program main function is still there and the program class is still there, but it's hiding it from me. I don't care because it's standard stuff, right? So which is good. Args is there, and I can always turn it off again so that I can do my own program CS file if I want to, but besides the point. So args is the args that I will get back into that function anyway, right? It's your args that you will get back in your program main file. And let's say we will grab the first one. And let's say we want to say, for instance, help me out here, color. Oh, so another cool thing that I want to show you, who here is familiar with Github Codepilot, right? 2, 3, 4. Right, so Github Codepilot here understands what I'm trying to do, and it kind of infers using machine learning to code for me. This is not statistical things. This is AI that sits with me, right, and codes with me. So Github Codepilot has never seen my code before. It understands my intent, and it knows that I'm using argument 0, and it kind of generates one with probably going to use argument 1 in this case. Age. Okay, I'm not going to use age. Let's see what it does with color. Well, it infers arguments as arguments 1, which is fine, right? So we have name and color, but it needs to be in that order, right? Name, space, color. Let's see what happens there. So let's say we replace this with name, and we say color is what? This is amazing. It even understands strings. Within your string, that's not a programming language, it infers what I want to do, which is crazy. So not colored, but okay. It kind of completed the thing for me. Right, so running this now, I'm not sure if it will cd bin debug net6. It's a bit longer, I need to. Is that still visible anyway? Yeah, okay. So if I say meetup, okay. This pops up in PowerShell because it's a PowerShell thing. I need to kind of execute this whole thing as meetup. It hasn't built yet, that's why. Let me show you quickly another tool that's important. It's called System.CommandLine. CLI tool that you can use in your framework. It will watch your files for changes and automatically build your application as you move on, right? So I'm just inside Visual Studio in the terminal, and what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to go .NET watch, and whatever happens after watch, it will execute. So I will then call build, which is a .NET build command. And when I do that, so that's .NET watch is a global tool. I'll get to that in a second. So not just it builds my thing now, it also watches for changes. So you will see now when I make more changes, I don't have to build again. It's built already. So now there is artifacts, right? So typically, if I do that, it will give me an error, right? Because it expects that arguments. So let's be humble about it. Let's say, for instance, meetup exe, we say Fanie, and we say red. That happens. Whoop-de-doo, we've got our CLI done. But, you know, stuff happens. People sometimes create chaos. It's just a string. These things happen. We don't want unhandled exceptions in our code. This is a bad experience for any developer, right? So just to show you, I've not used the System.CommandLine yet. And as a developer right now, going to this meetup tool, it's not a very good experience. So let's quickly fix that. It would be cool to just call it like that, right? Oh, it actually works now because I've included, in PowerShell, you have to do that. You have to say, add my current path, my current directory to the path, so it will actually resolve meetup instead of meetup.exe. It's a bit funny. But now it's like meetup, it's like a proper tool, right? Meetup, Fanie, color is red, right? That still works. But what would be cool if I say, as a novice developer coming in, what is this meetup tool? Typically, I just go that, right? .h, -h. It doesn't understand that because, you know, okay, well, maybe I can say -h and something. it interprets the -h as my name and the dot as the color, which is not my intent. I just want help, right? So we need something to understand those kind of things, and that will lead us to do certain things like if, name, let's see if it figures that out. If name is, or let's say if name starts with let's say that, then it's probably a help file. You need to do all sorts of kind of things. See what it's doing here? It's actually regenerating. Copilot's generating help files for me. It's amazing. I can just have this. Nice. So you could just use Copilot, apparently. But the point I'm trying to make is it will, for a tool that has only one command, it will blow up your code, right? It's complex and all that kind of things. It works, nothing wrong with it. You can party on that. So we'll do that. Okay, that still breaks. Let's just go to the one that sort of works. It kind of gives me my help page now, right? Now, as a developer, I went to Fanie's talk. I learned all about System.CommandLine. I went in, I Googled it. Let's do that. Let's go to System.CommandLine and Google this whole thing, right? So if you go to Google, you go to System.CommandLine, all this stuff I'm going to tell you today is in the documentation. It's open source. You can go look at it yourself. My intent is not to sell you System.CommandLine. My intent is just to show you there is something for your workflow that you can use, all right? And it is basically a NuGet package. You can just go grab. Sorry for the white. I need to, this obviously does not respect dark mode. And which one did I copy now? I want to have that package reference. So I want to just plug that in there. I think it's an item group, right? Okay, that's what I want, but not that. Stick that package reference in there. Item group there. Okay, there's no formatter for that. Save. So now it's going in, installing System.CommandLine. I need to also note that this is still a pre-release version. So if you just go without a beta version or just search for NuGet to install a version of System.CommandLine right now, you have to specify the where is it? Latest version or something like that. It was here somewhere. I don't know where it's now. There is I don't know where it is now. There's a place where you need to explicitly tell it to get the preview version. All right. So basically, let's use that now in our application. Right. I've installed it. I'm not doing anything else. Okay. I'm actually going to revert this whole thing here. Okay? But one small thing I want to do, I want to actually add a root command. So I say root command. Okay, that explains a very nice example. Let's just go to the basics of it. We'll just go version, take that version out because it should infer the version from my CS proj. Resolve that, System.CommandLine, right? Creating a new root command, okay, it doesn't need to use that, it needs to use a explicit name. Let's call this awesome meetup CLI tool. Something, I don't know, generic. Right, so that's our root command. And that's the very first, it's not an application, it's the application's kind of command that it executes first. And then what we also would need is we would need something like a CLI app. And that's a new, I think it's a new command line. Let's see if Copilot kind of figures out what I'm trying to do. Command line application. Yeah, okay, that's fine. That's what I want to do. It doesn't like that. I think it's command line application builder. Something like that. But let's go to the docs again. Where is it now again? Yeah. I'm going to quickly steal something from the docs here. Middleware. Yeah, command line builder. Nice. Okay. Builder intent was there. Why doesn't it want to? Yeah, there we go. Nice. And then I want to say to this CLI app, I also want to say, I generate those kind of things. Nice. So don't worry too much about the use defaults right now. I'll get to that when we almost end this talk. But it's basically building me a CLI app using the root command that I gave it. And it understands everything in that root command at the moment. Right? It ignores the rest. And now I can say, for instance, await CLI app dot. I need something else on top here. I need to add the invocation namespace to invoke. Why is that not working? Where's my? Let's go see where's that. Oh, parsing it needs. Parsing, my bad. Invoke async. Right, so it needs to do that. So what that's doing, it's actually giving the arguments that I have before, like the one that the console, the previous version is trying to parse itself. It's just passing that to the CLI application. And it will take care of the rest. Just going to save that and see what that will do for this whole application. It built, which is great. Now let's go here again, right? Let's go meetup H. Okay, that's also a problem, because it probably tries to do that here. Let's do that, save. Why is it failing? It's failing because of reasons, because I'm not using name, etc. Actually, let's move that down to show you that it's, I can use my key bindings, nice. Okay, that should work. So anything below line 21, it will actually not do anything because it will get stuck into the CLI tool or library because it's doing that for me. Let's see. Okay, alias cannot contain white space. At least it's showing me what is wrong, right? So, okay. So the name cannot have a, okay, so the name cannot have a spaces, obviously. Let's go meetup CLI, I suppose. Is this really, just want to see what happens here. Create it like that, okay. Generations may be wrong. Let's just create it like this. For instance, say, awesome meetup. Without spaces. I think the spaces thing is a thing that's messing it up a bit. And out of the box, it knows, it understands what I'm trying to do. So you have -h, but not just you have -h, you have aliases of h. Sometimes people like -?, sometimes they like --help, which is more explicit. But there's also a version, right? How many times you have to check a version for something? Oh, that's not right. Check a version for something and you don't know what version it is. So there's a already built-in versioning for that. If I can, there we go. There's the version thing. I don't know why it's failing though, but it's there. And then there's a usage instruction. So saying, oh, I know it tries to execute that other code. So I was actually wrong here. That it actually, when it's done, it doesn't wait here. It waits for this instruction and moves on. So it breaks here because those arguments are not there. Let's comment that out. so that's what you get out of the box. Now let's try to see if we can build a root command or a sub command to do the same thing, right? I'm again in the wrong. There we go. I like to also, there's the application. So now let's say, for instance, we want to build a, I don't know, a greeter command that says hello world or something, whatever you pass in. So let's say hey command, and we say, okay, that's a new command. We'll call it greet. Let's actually do this. I've got other idea. Let's say greet command and pause. It's actually inferring what I'm trying to do. I kid you not. I did not come up with this. This is amazing. So there's my greet command, and I want to greet someone by the name, right? So that is an argument I want to give my command, right? Or option. Maybe let's start with argument. And then we say, for instance, var name or what? What is happening here? I'm sure this is recorded and it's somehow going to Github and it's generating my stuff. This is not, yeah. So this works, but it's not really my intent. Name argument is a new argument. And it's an argument of string, very important. Because when you're working with type systems, sometimes with strings, sometimes it's dates, sometimes it's ints. You don't want people to pass in strings for ints and vice versa. It needs to be strongly typed. That inferred name because of the name of the variable, most likely. Okay, great. Now we have the argument. Now let's tie the argument back to the command, right? So now we say greet command dot add argument, and then we can just pass in the name command, the name argument in there. But where's the logic? Where does this whole thing go? Because I can save it. I probably also have to add it to my root command. That's also important. Let me do that before I forget. What? What's happening? It knows that I want to do that, right? So the root command, add command, so you have to add that subcommand to the root command for it to work, right? So now we have a root command with a subcommand with the argument. Still following? Okay, now let's see. Meetup H. It picked up a greet command with a name, greet someone. Let's see how that is used. Greet, nothing happens. I haven't specified anything anyway, so it doesn't break. Great. Let's implement that. So what we want to do is we want to say a greet handler. Okay, that's not action handler. That's not really what I want to do. But let's say it is. What was it called again? I'm just going to see. Set handler. It is the greet command dot set handler. Okay, that just does the async thing, which I don't really want. And I want to say, you know what? I want to pass in my message. And also importantly, I need to give it the message type, because if I don't specify the message type, it kind of tries to pass in the container of all the variables, and then I need to sort it out myself. But now I just need to specify it like that, and I need to, what's happening here? Interesting. This is now string. Okay. That should do the trick, I believe, or not. Something is happening. Something is wrong here. Let me see. That. Oh yeah. My eyes.
I think the set handler doesn't actually return a handler.
Sorry?
I think set
Oh, yeah, maybe you're right, yeah. Just want to see here, because there's, oh yeah, you're right, yeah. There we go. Good catch. There we go. Right, so there we go. So important, my message here is a string, and it inferred that string from the argument I passed in as a value item. If you also look at the signature of this whole thing, it gets a I-value descriptor, which is a description of an argument or an option. So that kind of ties it down. And if you have multiple arguments, this is where you define the order, because order sometimes matter, and other times it doesn't. Right, so there we go, there's set handler. Now if I run the whole thing, hello argument name, that's funny, that didn't work at all. I have to use message, yeah. So, sorry? Yeah. I need to use message here. Message here, there we go. That should fix it. No, it doesn't. Somewhere it's name.
Maybe it's like message.value, because message probably is not a string but an object.
Message is a string, yeah. And there's name. That's funny. Let's go to the help. Even on this level, it understands that it has help, right? Meetup, greet, name. That's what we did. Okay. Let's see. Set handler, name. Oh, you know, this is not a name argument, but it's the same thing. And this is, aha. Name argument, message. That doesn't really matter, right? Because name and name here is the same thing. That's funny. It should work. There we go. For some reason yeah. Now it works, apparently. But you get the point, right? So this is how you define your things. It's a kind of a DSL. It's a weird way of thinking about it. But when you really work with this whole thing, you understand, oh, it's actually much better to have a structure while you're working with these kind of things. If I convert this now to options, let's make this not an argument. Let's make this an option. And we say this option, and I think options works differently, right? We can just ignore that. This Copilot sometimes is not intuitive enough. Let's just, okay, that infers it. That's great. You just have to be careful all the times what you do with Copilot, because sometimes they might be drunk, you know. No pun intended. Okay, name option. No, there's still name argument there. That's still name option, and that one is fine. Okay. I can give it name option because options are arguments also in implement I description or I value descriptor. And give it a add option. But the cool thing about options is it can be it can be set as required or not required, right? So I want, let's first test it see if this works. Unrecognized name or argument. That's great, it works. It's an error, but it works because it's not an argument, it's an option. If I say name, that works. Okay? Because that's what we want. It is also cool in some points if you, for instance, say num. How cool is that? Did you mean name? It understands what you're trying to do, right? So it's kind of POSIX, it's the same thing. That's standard. It tries to adhere to that standard without you thinking about it, that underlying fluff. How about tab completion? So I had to make a little hack on my machine to make tab completion work with PowerShell. But the way tab completion actually works, there's a thing called dotnet suggest. It's a system on its own that reads a bunch of metadata of your application and compiles a kind of a static object of it. And when you call that, given input, it will provide you with a kind of a context of where you are. So it gives you the result, gives you the tab completion idea. But to tie that together, you had to, in the documentation, you can just follow along. In PowerShell, you need to enable certain things, execute certain PowerShell scripts to relay your commands from your application CLI to dotnet suggest, and it will give you that same experience back. And this is exactly what this does. They use defaults. So calling this method is equivalent in calling .use version option. So you can still, if you don't want the defaults, you can take defaults out. It calls to add the version information. It adds the help. It adds the environmental variables and use parse directive. I think there's more. Use suggest directive. It's that one. Use suggest directive. So that's the thing that relays it to what's it called? .NET suggest. So it's already baked in. Let's see if that works. Okay, that doesn't work. I wonder why not. Greet. Why doesn't that work now again? It's supposed to work. Maybe I should. No. It's supposed to work now because I have this application. I can show you one that definitely is working, this other demo. Maybe let's go there to see, to get the full effect. Let's go. Demo 1, there we go. Again, cd debug. Open. No, come on. There we go. We want to live here. And I think what we have is here is we have a thing called sys. What was that thing called again? This thing is called something else. Oh, it's called demo 1. Okay, obviously. Demo 1, and now that works. Great. It has echo, and the thing about echo there is it has a strongly typed argument in that case, which is an enum. Just want to give you some explanation there. So this enum only understands a console or a file. So if we want to say EC dash, see it completes the echo. I can go, I'm just pressing tab, and it kind of picks up the options. Even if I say lowercase console, because casing matters in Linux, it will fix it as well.
So how does PowerShell communicate with the program for the developer completions? Is that?
Yeah, so there's this little thing to the docs. I'm just going to refer you there. There's this tab completion page, right? And then there's a whole documentation. So the .NET CLI has it built in already, but for PowerShell, you need to do a few things if you're not running on Linux, right? For Bash and for there's these shims for Bash, but for PowerShell here, you can see here, you have to go to your profile and you have to add this shim to your profile. So let's open up that, see what it's in there. That will basically relay everything to .NET suggest. It's a kind of a clever way of doing it. And so this is one way. It's just like opening up this portal of .NET suggest is here for certain key bindings, or I don't know precisely how this works. For certain, I think there's a certain binding that you can actually give it. I'll get to directives in a second. There's probably a certain directive that it listens for. And then when you pass that directive in, it bounds it to dotnet suggest, and it puts it in. That's where middleware comes into play in CLI apps. You can have middleware that slots in this information in your application. Which brings, it's a nice bridge to kind of directives, because you can in this application that I have here, for instance, I can have a bunch of things like, let's say that one, and I want to actually say parse. When I say parse in front of everything, it kind of doesn't do anything. It just gives me a kind of a graph of what it understands. So it's a way of, you can also do like diagnostics on it, and that's how the system understands what is right or what is wrong. And you can completely mess this up, and it will still give you the right answer, but it's not the proper answer in a sense. So I think also how this works with dotnet suggest, if I read the PowerShell very quickly. No, I cannot. This line info. Suggest. Maybe there is a way of just getting it. Let's just see. Let's go .NET. I don't know if this will work. No, that doesn't work. But it's a directive. So anything in like these block brackets is a directive you put in. On just going to the docs again, on the whole middleware thing, you're familiar with ASP.NET, right? Building APIs in ASP.NET. The middleware aspect where you can create authentication middleware, authorization middleware, and logging middleware, all those kind of things. And then you have your application and the filters and those kind of things. It's exactly the same concept in CLI apps. It's a bit more advanced, so I won't dive into that, but just to kind of go in there. It's just by going .add middleware, and then you can inject stuff in for your application to work with. So in this case, it just whatever you say, just say hi will be injected. Or sorry, it will check for just say hi, and it will return with certain things in this case, and then go to the next pipe in a middleware. It's actually quite cool. I think that's it. Very quickly. Did I miss anything else? Let me just see. Are there any, the dependency injection it supports, we're not going to go into that, but that is cool. Are there any questions? No? Thank you so much for this talk.